Hey, Buddy Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report, the final one of 2024. We're just about 5 hours from 2025 here, and probably one of the better years, calendar years in Celtics history here from their record standpoint. 62 wins, I think, in total between last season and this season. Tonight's blowout win over the Raptors, and that's going to, barring a Thunder win tonight, lead the NBA in wins going into next year. They won a championship, of course, in June, Noah. So let's look back at some of the best moments, best memories we had. And we both covered the team throughout their run late last year into this new season here. So one memory that stands out above all others covering this team over the last year.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Game 3 of the finals. Obviously, the night they won the championship, it was incredible being in this building, the fans, everything. It was an awesome experience. But I felt like Game 3 of the finals, when they took that commanding 3-0 lead in Dallas, you just all of a sudden kind of realized that this team that we've been talking about all year, that was historically great, that did well by all these advanced metrics, that had all these good quotes and storylines, like they actually were what they said they were, and they were a team that was on the cusp of winning a championship. And I think it hit me when they took that 3-0 lead and Jaylen Brown hit that big shot that, I think is still a little bit of an underrated shot in the scheme of things. But that night, I had no doubt that they were not going to blow a 3-0 lead in the finals, just given who they were all year. And so just seeing that, being in Dallas, just realizing what was happening. And I remember in the post-game press conferences, they were already talking like, they won the championship ultimately, and maybe that's why they lost Game 4. But that game was very special to me.
Yeah, and the clincher, of course, too, being here in the Pritchard shot. Jimmy was right next to me during that. I remember we were both looking at him running the scores table saying he's going to do it again because he did it earlier in the series. And he just started shaking me and going crazy. He had the hard hat on press row, and then we were able to have the full crew do the Garden Report down here, probably right around this spot on the Loge, and we were here until 3-4 a.m. that night.
Yeah, we were here very late. That was a really cool experience, just being here with the confetti, and then Jaylen Brown coming back with his Finals MVP trophy in the middle of the night, and just the guys trickling back in. It was a very unique atmosphere and a unique experience. And obviously, for people that have been covering the NBA for decades, I'm sure it's a moment that you wait for a very long time, or even for you, it was 5-6 years before you got to experience it. For me, I felt like I won the jackpot, honestly, that it was my first season doing it, and the next thing you know, a few months later, you're sitting here with the confetti, reflecting and being able to write the most impactful stories you could possibly write, because you're capturing something that's so inherently fascinating and engaging to fans. So it was very cool.
And it was interesting because that night you were at the pressers, right? I wasn't at any of the pressers.
Yeah.
I still don't even think I've watched back some of them in full. The locker room was just crazy being in there, and we got a couple guys, we were able to pull them to the side. I didn't get soaked, which John predicted I would have. I don't know how that ended up happening, but I was in there for a good hour just taking video of everything that was happening in there, and it was mostly just Pritchard, Cornette, Walsh, and Davison were going crazy in there, even though didn't play significant roles on this championship team, but just seeing everybody's reaction to it, especially being around them all year. And I remember Tyler Lashbrook came up to me in there and was just like, thank you for covering this team. And now he's up in Maine. I'll throw out a Maine memory. One of the lowlights probably was that championship game up there. We thought we were going to go covering a championship up there, and they lost bad in that game.
Well, all the bandwagon. Suddenly we had a whole media the last game, and I was like, everybody's going to be here to cover this championship. I was really a believer in that Maine team when they weren't that good. And then I started thinking to myself, I hope this isn't foreshadowing for Boston, because there was a lot to love about that Maine team, and then they had that 1-0 lead in a best-of-3 series, and then they really fell apart there. So it was not ultimately foreshadowing, but Maine's been really fun to cover, and I think when we don't get that many chances to go up there because of the scheduling and everything, but when we do, I always think it's cool. I know, we talk about it a lot, but there's a lot of synergy between the two programs, and you really feel it. And I think seeing guys from Maine like Mimi and Jordan on a personal level, that's been one of the highlights of covering this team, because you get to go up there where there's really no media, there's not a lot of fanfare, and you can kind of grab anybody and talk to them. And at that point, it was a dream for a lot of them to be really NBA players, and now seeing Nimi sign a multi-year deal, seeing Jordan really look like he's coming into his own, guys that last year really were, and Drew Peterson too. I don't think he was on people's radar, but getting to cover him early on and then actually see him impacting the floor, it's very rewarding from a media standpoint.
Cater's first start in Atlanta this fall was pretty cool too. He's gotten more and more involved into year 2. I think his emergence was probably one of my favorite stories of 2024, and he continues to play most nights here in Boston when someone's down. I'll go back to Indiana, though. That series, probably the best series that we watched on the whole run. Game 4 out there, a clincher as well, on the road. amazing couple games out there, probably the 2 best games of the year, right up there with any other, I'd say. And Jalen, his emergence this year, winning East Finals MVP before he went on to win Finals MVP, of course. And he just let loose throughout this year. We could probably do like a top 10 quote list from him this year. And
Yeah.
the one that's a number play for me is some of those guys on the Pacers turned into Michael effing Jordan. I think he was talking about TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard just going wild throughout that series. But there was such a sense of relief that night because Indiana hit them so hard. Game 1, probably the play of the year, was Jaylen Brown tying that game. Or was that the go-ahead shot?
I think that's the play of the year, actually.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Game 1, they were about to be down 1-0 to the Pacers.
Did that
down
tie the game or go
tied
ahead?
tied the game, but not just that. They were down by 3 with like however many seconds to go, and
all the Pacers
had
to
the
do
ball.
was inbound the ball.
All he has to do is inbound the ball, and then he gets the deflection off Siakam, and then finishes that play on the 3. You never know. I mean, Joe's talked about it a million times. A couple plays are all the difference on a championship run. They come down 1-0. Indiana feels confident, rejuvenated. You don't know where that series goes. Instead, it's a sweep, and we always say it was a very competitive sweep. But that was probably the play of the year if we're talking about impact on the Celtics.
I like Jalen's dunk contest too. He didn't win it. I thought the effort was strong, and I like the fact that he did it because All-Star Weekend, there was nothing else to watch. And I'm dreading All-Star Weekend a little bit the way it went last year. It could be better in San Francisco, the setting and all that. But Jalen saved All-Star Weekend for us out there by doing the dunk contest, so I'll give him credit for that one.
And I think also that the dunk contest highlighted something bigger about him, that he honestly just doesn't really care what people think. He's going to do his own thing. And the dunk contest was one symbolic moment, but it really represents his year and the way that he rolled out his shoe line and his fashion line 741 and everything that he's opted to do. And then in turn, all the success that he's seen, I felt like the dunk contest really captured a lot of what makes him different than a lot of other NBA players.
Off-season moment. Luke Cornett being announced as the first signing of free agency.
That was so good.
There was a rumor floating around, and he never confirmed it, that he wanted to be the first Woj bomb of free agency, and he was. And so
I think he denied it, actually.
He right as free agency open, we're doing our live show and his re-signing, which I don't know where we thought that was going to go. I think we had some questions about maybe there being some more money out there for him, and ultimately it got confirmed down the line that there was a better offer, a couple of offers out there for him in free agency, but he stayed. He's been outstanding this year, and I know I'm always the one hyping him up, but a couple more blocks in this game tonight, 4 the other day. At his best, he's been out of this world for this team at this point, especially compared to where he started. So we're into year 5 now of the Cornett experience, and so him re-signing and getting a no-trade clause with the 1-year deal I thought was awesome.
Yeah, that was very cool. I'm trying to think of other off-season moments. I honestly really enjoyed Summer League just from like a
You liked Lonnie Walker, the experience covering him for the
Yeah,
short
I mean, we
time
didn't
that
really
did.
get much, but people were fascinated by him. I think, he kind of captivated the fan base in a sense and still does. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll be back. There's reports that he might come back to the NBA. But Summer League was just a very cool experience. And honestly, what I learned from Summer League is that it doesn't really translate to what's actually going to happen, because if you look back at Summer League, like Jaden Springer was the guy that looked really good in limited minutes. Jordan Walsh, looked really far from being an NBA player, and so next year at Summer League I'll probably have fewer takeaways because it really did reverse, and I think Jordan's Summer League stint has now it's a distant memory, and some of the guys that played really well on that team really haven't had much of an impact. So that was a cool experience, but ultimately not super consequential.
I'll throw Sam Hauser in there too. The finals performance, probably the most underrated performance on this team through the whole postseason run. It's been a rough fall for him injury-wise, consistency-wise, but it feels like he's coming out of it. Underrated contributor to that finals win
Definitely.
was Sam Hauser there, especially when he was switching on to Luka, shutting him down. And there was a little bit of a Luka panic attack around the national media given his performance of those first 3 games. And guys like Hauser and others on this team shutting him down were memorable moments throughout that run as well. That whole series was pretty captivating. You had Kyrie coming back to Boston, them beating him, maybe putting that story to rest. So there was a lot of good stuff throughout this run. Cleveland was interesting, of course, as well in round 2. And they probably ended the Heat thing forever by beating them in round 1.
Yeah, and that Heat series was weird. I still wish Jimmy had played because I feel like it created this weird end to the rivalry. But they got it done, and ultimately we talked about it all year. We thought that was going to be a really good first round for them because it was going to make them have to be really mentally sharp. They weren't going to overlook a Hawks team. And Miami was the perfect perfect original team for them to face and then defeat them and then move on. And there was a line that Erik Spoelstra said after they lost. He said, they really beat us, and I have a feeling they're about to do that to a whole bunch of other teams in this playoff run. And I remember hearing that and thinking they're probably actually going to win the championship, because if Erik Spoelstra feels that way, like everybody that knows basketball, everybody that knows this league really has a strong sense about this group, and obviously it ultimately ended up panning out.
I'll throw funniest moment out there, and I'll see if you can think of one. Not too far in the distant past, the Grant incident down in Charlotte. I mean, that was
just weird.
That was weird, funny. I guess the funniest part about it is that he did 2 post-game interviews about it, and Tatum wasn't happy. He ended up reluctantly talking about it a couple of days later, but Grant's revenge game per se, and unfortunately he's down for the year with an injury at this point. But that was a weird series of events down there, and the whole aftermath of it was really funny down there in Charlotte.
Yeah, I don't know if I can think of like funny on-court things, but some of the press conferences, in particular with Joe, there's been some really funny moments. I know CLNS posted like some of his best quotes from the past year. There are some pretty good ones in there. Some, at least I think at practice especially, they get me something about the environment.
None of you invited my funeral. I think
that was a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones, and so I think Joe has supplied some laughs, however sarcastic they might be. I'm trying to think. Most of the players are not like really trying to create a stir there. Luke has had some moments as well.
Luke's always got a good celebration.
There was one I can't remember what he said, but there was one in the playoffs where I had the mic and he said something so funny.
Luke?
Yeah, during the playoffs. It was during the finals, and it was an immediate availability at the Auerbach Center, and then I actually had to like recollect myself to be able to ask the question, and I don't remember it was a funny moment. I can't remember what he said though.
I like Doc Rivers just hunched over after Pritchard hit the shot a couple months ago. I thought that was good too, and he got asked about that on a podcast recently. I mean, Doc was just in shambles after he hit that shot, and then he said he had him circled after. That was pretty good. There's a lot of great memories. Let us know if we missed anything below, but that'll do it for 2024. A special year for the Celtics. Can they carry it forward to 2025? I think the biggest thing we'll all be watching for is who purchases this team into the new year, and that news should be coming before long here, and whether they can get back on track here. New threats emerging. We get to see them against the Thunder on Sunday, so all that and more coming up quickly into January, which is going to be an extremely difficult, busy month for the Celtics here. We'll have most of it covered on the road, starting with Houston. Noah's going to be there on Friday, and I'll be joining the trip on Sunday in Oklahoma City, where we'll catch up with old friend Josue Pavon here, who we said goodbye to this calendar year as well after maybe almost a decade with CLNS Media. So looking forward to that and more here on CLNS Media. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you enjoyed by the time you hear this New Year's Eve and your day off today on New Year's Day here. And for Noah Dalzell, who I'll say as well, great addition to the CLNS Media family this year. Goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you on Thursday for remote coverage of Celtics Timberwolves. Talk to you then.